Hey guys, how's it going? Katsu here. Thank you for tuning in to another tutorial. So since I started working with Blender, I've been quite obsessed, and as if you've seen my videos, I have a passion for astronomy and astrophotography, and I've been trying to recreate some of the astronomical objects using Blender, and also not only using Blender but doing it procedurally. It's something that I enjoy a lot. It's very relaxing to me, and I try to replicate as realistic as possible the different astronomical objects. And one of the objects that I've been experimenting on a lot is the nebulas. So I did last year a 3-part tutorial on how to create a procedural planetary nebula, and the thing is that I one of the things that I didn't like about that tutorial is that I didn't have much control over the textures, or I think they weren't as realistic as it could be. So I've been experimenting a lot with that, and I think that I've found a better way to do it and a simpler way to do it. So what am I looking for? What is the objective of this tutorial? And it's to create structures that are more complex like this. Let me just go ahead and zoom in here, see if we can get a better look at this image. So I want to create these type of structures, this type of clouds that have depth to it. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on this tutorial, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. As usual, well, in this case, I'm not going to delete my camera and the cube. I'm going to use them, so I'm going to delete the point. I'm going to use it as well. However, I'm just going to delete it for the time being. So I'm going to go ahead and scale my cube by 10 by hitting S and then 10. And let me reset my camera location to 0 and rotation to 90 and 0. Also, and I'm going to pull it back just with G and Y on the Y axis. And also on my focal length, I'm going to try to mimic that of a telescope by going up to 400 millimeters. My focal length, I'm going to bring it way back here, and let me just look at it. Why am I not looking at it? What's going on here? Is it too far away? Did I went too far? Okay, let me bring it in. Oh, there you go. So, okay. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. It's the camera distance. If that happens to you, like you have an object that's like too far away, what you can like and it just disappears, what you can do is just go into view and increase the end distance. And that, I think, should fix it. Let's see here. Why didn't it fix it? Let's see here. This is my end. There you go. So let me bring it like here. I think that's good. And also, since we're going to be working with bolometrics as well on EB right now, I'm going to also increase my end distance here to 2000 as well, just to be able to look at the bolometrics from far away, I think. So let me go ahead and split here, and we'll change this to our shader editor. Let's change this to render, and also let me add a light source. It's going to be a point. Since we scaled it by 10, I think I'm going to go for a 5-meter radius and just crank it all the way up here to 20,000 watts. Okay, so select our cube, get rid of our principled BSDF, and let's add a principled volume here. Let's plug it in. There you go. Nice and easy. So how are we going to approach this? First of all, I am going to create a gradient texture in order to control the nebula, like the base shape. We need to change our texture coordinate to object and point to texture. Also, how did I do this? Make sure that you have your Node Wrangler add-on enabled. Go to add-ons and then Node Wrangler. make sure it's enabled, and then Control T as in Thomas, and you'll get your mapping and texture coordinate. So object to vector, texture, linear to spherical, and plug it in. And just like that, you now have a sphere. So this is going to be our base shape. So I'm going to frame it like really pretty here, and just select our frame, F2, base sphere. So now that we have this, what I want to do next is I want to create a irregular texture, because we're not doing a planetary nebula or something that's more spherical in nature. So in order to achieve that, real simple, noise texture with a color ramp to be able to control it. Let's plug our factors here. And then I'm going to add a math node so that I can control the strength. We're going to set it to multiply. I'm going to duplicate my math node, and I'm going to subtract it from our base sphere. So if I plug this here, voila, now we get an irregular shape. Now, I'm going to decrease, as we can see here, this looks kind of blurry, and that is because our samples are set at 64. So I'm going to increase that. I'm going to decrease my tile size. And also it looks blurry because it lacks the detail and the roughness. So let's go ahead and add detail, add roughness. And now as we move it along, we can now start seeing more definition towards the edges. Now that we have this, the other thing that I want to do is I need to increase my my math node, let's say by 2. Big difference. Now we see a small smudge here. So we can start controlling it by moving our sliders. So we can bring it back up, and look at this. Looks beautiful. Completely irregular. It has like long strands towards the edges. And if I want to increase this effect, I can just decrease or bring my white slider down, just like so. And now this looks more defined. So it's much better looking. And this is just a matter of taste and something that you're experimenting a little bit until you find something that you find pleasing or appealing to you. And that's how you create now your, let's call it a nebula edge structure, just to give it a name. So this will be our nebula edge structure. There you go. And now that we have that, the next thing that we are going to work is with our inner texture. Now, I've been toying and experimenting with different methods in order to achieve a good result. I've been working with combining Voronoi textures, working with noise textures, combining them together, a lot of different things. And one of the most aesthetically pleasing that I found is the one that I'm going to share with you right now, and it's quite simple. It's really simple. The way we do it is I'm going to use basically the same thing as this, which is going to be like a noise ramp math multiply. Math multiply. There you go. Just plug it in here. And we are going to, let me just duplicate this math node, and I'm going to change it to multiply so that we can combine both of them together. So basically I'm combining this result with what I'm going to do right here. Just like so. And also make sure to increase your strength, because this is set at 0.5 right now. So I'm going to increase it at 2. And if I start messing around with the sliders, we can start seeing a different result, much more compact, but with more structure on the inside. And you can increase that by just giving it more detail and increasing the roughness. I wouldn't go too high in the roughness, because if you go too low, it looks blurry, as you can see here. If you go too high, it looks just too noisy. So I usually go between 0.6, 0.7, something around there. It's a good number. Same with the detail, you can crank it up to 16, but again, you might get interesting results going between 10 and 16. I would recommend going over those numbers. And with the scale, you can go crazy with this. I would tend to go no higher than 8, perhaps. If you go to smaller scales, you get more interesting results, as you can see here. So now you're getting a more defined structure, more defined texture for your nebula. Now here's where it gets very interesting, and this is the last trick. And honestly, the way that I achieved this result was by going over tutorials for procedural textures. And I looked into a tutorial on creating procedural leather, and I found the result quite interesting, and I basically imported that procedure or that method here, and it gave a astounding result, which is what I'm going to share with you. And it's quite simple. What you have to do is add a mapping node before this noise texture. Just plug your vectors together, change it to texture, and then I'm going to alter or distort this vector by adding a noise texture before. So, like so. Now, let's take a look at our result here. Just let's give it a minute for it to start, to finish compiling your shaders. And one of the things that I want to experiment right now is just, I want to see if plugging the object to the vector makes a big difference or not. I think it does. But let's see. So what happens if I'm going to set this back to default? So I reset the color ramp by just hitting backspace, and I'm going to do the same with my noise texture. I just reset the noise texture again by doing backspace, and I'm going to bring the detail to 0 and the roughness to 0. I'm going to move my scale to 2, and again, this is just so we can look at the result here. Okay, so look at this. If I bring the slider here, you start to get those like squiggly lines, which are quite interesting. Let me plug the object here to the vector and see the difference. Okay, so yeah, it looks better if you plug the object to the vector. So you start getting these abstract figures, right? But the cool thing about this, and again, in order to get this definition, I highly recommend decreasing your tile size and increasing your samples. So I'm going to go down to again to 4 and 256. And now let's increase my detail around 10, and let's increase our roughness. And something really cool starts to happen. You start getting this like lightning patterns, but they start adding together. And if you look at that, it looks really cool. It starts to look like the cloud structures from the nebulas that we're trying to achieve before. So you can just work with your detail and your roughness until you get something that that looks pleasing and interesting to you. You can also toy with the scale. I would recommend leaving it quite low. If you have a low scale, I think it looks better because the clouds look more defined, and you start to get like some contrast and shadows which looks pretty cool. And I think that we can decrease our multiply value, so in order to decrease the brightness. And if this still looks quite white, what we can do is maybe decrease the power. Let's bring it down to 15,000. Let's say 10,000. Okay, perfect. So this looks much better. You can start seeing these structures much more defined and quite pretty. And then again, once you've done that, what you can do is increase the detail again, just bring it up a little bit, just a tad of roughness here, just to play with this a little bit. Maybe we can have yeah, I think that the scale at 5 looks good. And let's bump our value again up to 5. Or what we can do, if we want to increase the overall brightness of this scene, what I usually do is I add a multiply node after this, and we can just crank it up. Let's say, let's wait for the shaders to finish compiling. And I'm gonna move it up to maybe 5 and see how it looks. I think that between 2 and 5 works pretty cool. So if we move it to 5 again, we can again see these structures. And if I bring the tile size to 2, this will make your computer quite slow, as you can see here, but you start getting really, really cool detail on your nebula. And so basically we have it like so right now. If you want, you can just play with your nebula edge structure as well in order to make it more, if you wanted to show more, like something like this perhaps. I think this looks cool. You might want to toy, for instance, if I do it like this dark structure right here and this one right here looks really cool. And I think I quite like this. Maybe I would bring the white slider. Okay, so I don't quite like, for instance, this is too regular for me. So I might want to decrease it a little bit. And maybe just bring the white slider around here perhaps. And this looks quite interesting with the contrast that we have right now. I think this looks pretty cool. And okay, so this, let me just add a frame here so that we can frame all of this. This is like the main nebula texture. And finally, in order to add color, what you can do is from this multiply node right here, you can just duplicate it and plug it like this. Again, this will allow us to control the strength of the color. Quite simple, just add a color ramp, plug it here, and we'll plug this result to our color node as so. And this, remember, it's currently at 0.5, so I might want to bring it up to 5 maybe. Let's take a look. Everything looks fine and dandy. And we're going to play with our colors. Now, for instance, if we look at this, this has like some white, some red or pink, and some between, it's green, but might be a little bit of a blue tint to it. So we can start adding those colors. Oh, right, it was at 2 pixels, the tile size. So let's change this white to a sort of something like that. We can bring it, let me just, I'm gonna add like 2 more. So let's give it, okay, like that. I think maybe I like this shade. Oops. Yeah, I think I like this shade right here. And I'm going to add a white one here. So, and again, this is all experimenting, see what works best. What's going on? There you go. So I'll leave this at 1 so that we can have like the core of the nebula bright. And then we can change this to green, like between green and blue perhaps. Something like that. There you go. And if we wanted to, either we can add, for instance, a hue saturation node right here, crank the saturation up a little bit, like 1.2 perhaps. And we might want to also, let me just see if this looks good. And I might want, let me just increase it again to like 15,000, make it more bright. Now also our world, I'm gonna bring it back to black so that we can see it better. And I'm going to do a quick render just to see where we're at right now. I don't think ambient occlusion will give me good, like different results. Volumetric shadows will. maybe increase the sample of our volumetric shadows, but this I don't know because it might slow the PC down. Just let's render it, see how it looks right now. This should take a minute, so let's wait, and I'll share the results with you as soon as it's done. Oh, there you go. So look at this, boys and girls. Beautiful structures. It has depth. You can see the core that's hollowed out. So this just looks amazing, as it is, honestly. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add the star background. I'm going to use the method that I've shared with you a couple of times on my videos, which is going with some volumetric, some Voronoi textures. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll get back to you as soon as I finish it, okay? All right, so I've finished working with the nodes. And so let me go ahead and I have my node set up here. It's like a not that detailed, but I think it'll do the trick. So let's just plug our add shader into our surface here. And let me bring this here like so. And there you go. So we have our nebula, pretty cool nebula. Right now our tile size is at 4 pixels. If I go all the way down to 2 pixels, it looks much more detailed. It looks much more, it has much more contrast to it. It looks just beautiful. So if your computer can allow it, I highly suggest going for that 2 pixel tile size, 256 samples. Let me go ahead and render this so that you can take a look at how the final result. And as soon as I have it ready, I'll get back to you. So just let's go ahead and increase our render. I'm gonna set it at 1024 samples. And I think this is going to be it. So let's go ahead and render it, and I'll see you in a minute. Hey guys, so the render is finished, and here's the result that we achieved with this. As you can see, it is a very simple way to creating something quite spectacular. And there are a lot of things that you can customize or control. It has a lot of flexibility in order to achieve something that's what you're looking for. So again, quite simple. Let me just return to the, I'm gonna go up to the 8 pixels again, just to make sure that I have, that it responds smoothly. So just to summarize on what we did today with our nebula, again, we need a mapping node set to texture type. We create our base sphere, and we have a nebula edge structure that we subtract from our base sphere. And then we have a main nebula texture with the interesting finding that is adding the noise texture and the mapping before your main noise texture, color ramp, and multiply. We combine the two with a multiply node and just add some colors up here. And that's basically it. Again, this is the result. I hope you liked the video. If you do, please consider liking, subscribing. I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to continue experimenting with different textures, different results, and I'll be making sure to post or create a tutorial in order to share my experiences with you. Once again, my name is Katsu. I hope you liked the video, and have yourselves a great day.